Because we live in a colorblind world, the majority is able to pretend that our nation's history and its views on race over the years can just disappear through the passage of a few laws. By pretending race isn't there, it doesn't go away. It just makes the issues we're seeing today that much more difficult to solve. This is what it's like to live in a racialized, colorblind society.
So back in middle school, not only have I been told that I'm pretty for a black girl, but quite a few people have actually told me that I have nice hair for a black girl. Which is funny because not many black girls hear those type of compliments, right? So most black girls and most black people in general don't necessarily have like the same hair texture as white people or Hispanics, Asians, etc. So before they even try to compliment me, they would want to touch my hair, ask if it's real, and just get a feel of it. So I honestly didn't think anything of it back then. I just took it as, oh, I'm just a black girl with nice hair. And I even had someone who I was crushing on in middle school, Puerto Rican, and he said I had nice hair for a black girl. So I just took it as, oh, cool, he likes my hair. But as I think about it now, and as I got older, it really is insulting because they already, like white people and Hispanics, they really have that mindset that black people, black girls, don't have good hair as other races.
As an adult, I've been called the good kind of black because I didn't sound ratchet, hood, or ghetto were the terms that were used. I don't think that people realize that telling any minority that you are so well-spoken or you sound so intelligent with the surprised face and the awed look like we shouldn't be, it's not a compliment. It's actually internalized as you are so well-spoken or intelligent despite your racial handicap.
You can be racist, just don't get caught. Microaggressions are one example of this. They're the things people say and do that subtly communicate, sometimes without the aggressor even knowing, degrading messages to racial minorities.
Okay, so while I was in middle school and high school, I had encounters with classmates who would shyly approach me and say, so are you, an immigrant? So from the way that they phrased the question, I got the sense that people generally equated immigrants as illegals. So during these times, I began to grasp that my legality as an immigrant was something serious. So in order to avoid the chuckles, the sorry looks, and any kind of further interrogations, I would lie and say that I was a citizen. And even then, it was hard for them to believe me. So for the longest time, I felt shame for myself and for fear for the possible deportation of my family. Knowing that I grew up in Florida and having my parents and siblings so close to me, I always knew the U.S. was my home. But the constant negativity that was attributed to being an illegal immigrant and the alien label forced me to resent me being here and truly feeling like I belonged here. So fortunately, because of the legislation of DACA, I was able to get a work permit that allows me to work and come to school. So in a way, I have to deal with two things. I'm legal in the sense that the government knows who I am, they know where I live, but at the same time, I'm illegal in the sense that I can't leave the country to visit my family and re-enter without any complications.
So I was born in Maracaibo, Venezuela in 1997, and my family and I moved to the United States, to Florida, when I was about 9 years old. So I didn't really know the language. Obviously, English was taught a little bit in Venezuela, but when I came here, I didn't know how to speak English, how to communicate with other people. I started out in the 4th grade, and my teacher there had a little translator that she would give me, and I never really could tell if like the other kids are making fun of me because I'm just naive like naturally, but also when you don't know what other people are saying, like you don't really know if they're making fun of you. And I never really assumed that, but I remember, some girls that were like specifically like rude, or like I would like attempt to like say like something and they would just like laugh, and that was rude. But moving towards like the end of elementary school and like middle school, I started to like come out of my shell a lot. I started to like speak English better, and towards like high school, like you could never even tell that I wasn't born in the United States, or you could never tell just by speaking to me that I was not American. So people would come up to me and just be like, oh, like if I shared my story with them, they would be like, oh, like your English is so good, like I could never tell, like things like that they didn't really bother me at first, but like growing up and like seeing how people treat immigrants and people treat people who have English as a second language, it just really irks me because it's implying that not knowing English is wrong, or that having English as a second language is wrong or stupid. And growing up as like the older sister, I was always the one that was had to translate for my parents, like when we would go to like McDonald's or go out to eat, or like when my parents had like to make an appointment at the doctor's or something, like I was always translating for them. And the fact that people like look down on them because of that is frustrating, because they like gave up their lives to come to the United States for better opportunities, and lots of other families do that, so it's actually brave.
Microaggressions can take three forms. The first form, a microassault, is an explicit racial disparagement characterized primarily by a verbal or nonverbal attack meant to hurt the intended victim through name-calling, avoidant behavior, or purposeful discriminatory actions. There are also micro-insults, which convey rudeness and insensitivity and demean a person's racial heritage or identity. Lastly, there are micro-invalidations, which are characterized by communications that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thoughts, feelings, or experiential reality of a person of color.
So I grew up in South Florida, and in South Florida, the general demographic is a lot of Hispanic and Latinx people. I was actually born in Venezuela, but about a month before my 3rd birthday, I moved down south to West Palm Beach. And my parents were all first-generation immigrants, but my parents didn't really force my older sister and I to speak Spanish growing up. The general language happenings in my family is my parents speak to us in Spanish, and we reply back in English or some weird Spanglish, right? So I really grew up speaking Spanish. I just can understand it. The problem is that growing up in a very Latinx populated situation and place is a lot of people around me were completely fluent in Spanish and English. A lot of people were really bilingual. And there was a really weird conjunction between people who were bilingual and Hispanic, saying, if you don't speak Spanish, you're not a real Latino. Do you mean your parents didn't tell you to speak Spanish? And then everyone else in society in greater America who were if you speak Spanish and you have an accent or something like that, you're not really American. So there's a weird gray area between not really being Latino and not really being American. And the problem with that is it kind of implies that there's a right way to be Latino and there's a right way to be American, and there isn't. And the language you speak doesn't really matter with any of that.
A lot of people say that they aren't a big deal. They call people fragile and overly sensitive, claiming that they're just trying to make everything about race. Microaggressions are made out to be insignificant and a way for people to make themselves into a victim that can be pitied. Nobody wants to be a victim, though. The fact of the matter is that, however small the microaggression may seem to an outsider, there is a significant cumulative impact. The implicit biases that run underneath these backhanded comments could later manifest into any wide variety of consequences, from discriminatory hiring practices to racial inequalities in policing.